We are truly coming off a historic week. This has been a priority for the president since he took office, to end this brutal war in Gaza. It is because of this president that humanitarian aid is being brought into the region.
Today, we're going to unpack some really high-impact events coming straight out of the executive branch. As always, our mission here is to dig into these big developments, global security, diplomacy, domestic policy, and pull out the key insights for you.
Exactly. And these aren't just isolated incidents. Looking at them together really gives you a snapshot, a pretty clear one, of the administration's priorities right now, both the immediate stuff and, the longer-term strategy. It helps make sense of the bigger forces at play.
Okay, let's get into it. First up, the really difficult situation with the conflict in Gaza. We heard from Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. She said the president wants to see it end and wants to save lives. But she also stressed that the main priority for the president also remains to bring all of the hostages home out of Gaza.
This has been a priority for the president since he took office, to end this brutal war in Gaza. It is because of this president that humanitarian aid is being brought into the region. However, the main priority for the president also remains to bring all of the hostages home.
So how do they manage that balance between the humanitarian side and this very specific hostage focus?
Well, that's the tightrope, isn't it? The statement really highlights that. I mean, obviously, the conflict itself has caused immense suffering, huge numbers of casualties, displacement, and the international pressure for some kind of resolution is massive. But focusing so explicitly on the hostages, it serves as more than just concern for those individuals. It's framed as a key diplomatic piece. The idea seems to be that securing their release could be the key, maybe the leverage needed, to unlock broader negotiations for peace, maybe even a ceasefire.
Right, using it as a potential starting point for something bigger.
Yeah.
Okay, let's shift gears then, closer to home. This big, beautiful bill, that's the administration's name for it. Leavitt called it, and this is quite a claim, one of the most fiscally conservative pieces of legislation that has ever made its way through Capitol Hill.
This is one of the most fiscally conservative pieces of legislation that has ever made its way through Capitol Hill. There's $2 trillion in mandatory savings in this bill, and not only that, the projected growth that this bill will bring to our economy. It will be an economic boom.
And the goal, to cut taxes, putting more money back into the American people's pockets. So beyond the name, how does this bill actually work? How does it aim to be fiscally conservative?
Yeah, it's definitely a bold claim. The core idea presented is twofold. It's designed to cut government spending, for one. Reports mention things like across-the-board reductions in budgets for certain federal agencies, aiming to shrink government outlay overall, and then there's the tax cut piece. The idea there is pretty standard supply-side thinking. Cut taxes for individuals, for businesses, give them more disposable income, the hope being they'll spend it, invest it, and that stimulates economic growth from the bottom up. So less government footprint, more private sector activity. That's the theory.
Okay, so tax cuts paired with spending cuts. Got it. Now let's look overseas again. Press Secretary Leavitt talked about a historic week, saying at POTUs, racking up win after win on behalf of the American people.
Yeah.
And she pointed to two pretty major things. First, the obliteration of Iran's nuclear capabilities, her words. And second, brokering a ceasefire between Israel and Iran.
President Trump restored peace through strength and acted decisively as commander-in-chief to obliterate the immediate threat of the Iranian regime's nuclear capabilities, and then brokered a ceasefire between Israel and Iran, which continues to hold. Then, the president traveled to the Netherlands by getting our allies to dedicate 5% of their GDPs to military spending.
Those sound huge. What's the strategic thinking behind linking those two? A military action and then a ceasefire?
It's presented as a sequence, a 1-2 punch almost. The obliteration claim likely refers to targeted military action against specific Iranian nuclear sites, research facilities, maybe enrichment plants. It's framed as a necessary step, a decisive move to neutralize a perceived threat, a show of strength. And then immediately following that display of military capability, you pivot to diplomacy, push for a ceasefire. So it's like, we have the power, and now let's talk de-escalation.
Yeah.
It suggests a strategy of speaking softly after carrying the big stick, so to speak.
Right, establish deterrence, then offer an off-ramp. And that wasn't all on the international front, was it?
Okay.
The president also traveled to the Netherlands. The big news there was getting NATO allies to commit 5% of their GDPs to military spending. That's all. Well, that's a massive increase for many of them.
Oh, absolutely massive. 5% is a huge number. It's significant on multiple levels. Obviously, it means a lot more money flowing into collective defense for NATO, more resources, better capabilities, increased readiness. But it's also politically significant. It signals a real shift, perhaps, towards Europe taking more ownership of its own security, which, could potentially allow the U.S. to adjust its own resource allocation, maybe focus elsewhere, or could just mean a much stronger, better funded alliance overall. It's a major development.
So quite a week then. We've covered humanitarian crises, hostage negotiations, major domestic economic policy, military action, and significant diplomatic shifts with NATO. It really paints a picture of the sheer range of issues the executive branch juggles constantly.
It really does. And maybe something for you, the listener, to think about is this. When you look at these different pieces, the focus on hostages in Gaza, this big, beautiful bill domestically, the actions regarding Iran and the NATO commitments, what underlying connections do you see? Is there an overarching strategy weaving through these different domains? What does it tell you about how the nation is positioning itself on the world stage right now? Just something to consider.